Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from hospitality. For starters, you'll need to own the additional workshop content, Hugs Lib and Harmony. Something to let you run an entirely different kind of colony today. Do you want to operate a sleazy motel, a luxurious B&B, host a car boot sale? Hospitality has you covered. We'll just be going over the base mod today, but don't worry, I'll be covering Orion's expansions in time. The mod itself is extremely streamlined. You won't need to build any production chains, research any new technologies, or jump through any hoops to make use of it. By simply playing with hospitality enabled, you'll have the opportunity to boost faction relations, earn yourself some extra silver, sell any unwanted goods, and potentially recruit some guests over to your colony. So how do we make use of it then? You're going to need to establish two very simple foundations to get the ball rolling: guest beds and set areas. Whilst you could get away with leaving guests on unrestricted areas and letting them wander the entire map at their leisure, you'll frequently find that they actively seek out the most dangerous places to exist, as if they have survival skills that are in a negative percentage. The guest beds you need aren't a specific buildable either. All beds now have a toggle on the gizmo bar to convert them into a guest bed, which gives it a plush purple sheet and also adds an associated silver cost to the bed. Very broadly speaking, the more you want to be able to charge for your accommodation, the nicer the room will need to be to offset that cost, as displayed by the attractiveness rating. The more positive that rating is, the more likely visitors are to stay and enjoy their time there. From here, we know what we need then: a variety of rooms to suit all types of potential guests, from those happy to slum it in a shared sleeping bag, to elaborate chambers that can even satisfy the needs of a royal visitor, complete with drapes, fine flooring, and all the accoutrements. You're going to want a bit of variety, as not all visitors will be bringing the same amount of wealth with them. Most often you'll notice that older visitors have more cash on hand, as the younger generation are having to work 2 to 3 jobs just to be able to pay rent to live in somebody else's garage. Now, a bedroom is all fine and dandy, but you can't expect visitors to stay there for a few days without a way to satisfy their other needs, food and recreation especially. This is where you're going to need to decide if you're running an all-inclusive service, or if these additions will require payment from the guest. So you'll be setting up 2 areas, an area for accommodation that will limit where visitors are able to roam, and a smaller area within that is specifically designated for shopping. This will allow guests to purchase any items stockpiled within that area, such as meals, drinks, or narcotics, as well as allowing you to set up a simple shop too, if you wanted to try and sell your spare clothing, any looted weapons, or excess materials. You also have the option to disallow shopping entirely if you desire, keeping your accommodation as straightforward as possible. That is the very basics, hosting and feeding your guests, but it isn't all you can do. Your own colonists can keep these guests entertained and attempt to make friends with them. Your socialites will be best suited for this, with a low skill risking potentially upsetting visitors or even damaging the relationship.
Yeah, I was a barmaid once and I loved it, the hustle and bustle of a busy bar.
Can I get some service, please?
Oh, fuck you.
This is where the potential to recruit visitors comes in. To attempt a recruitment, you'll need the visitor to have a high enough opinion of a number of your own colonists, as listed in the guest panel when they're selected. Recruiting someone in this way obviously isn't without drama, as pulling a guest over to your own colony by schmoozing them tends to make their old faction quite upset. Just be aware that unwaveringly loyal can't be bypassed by using this method, no matter how many fancy meals and bottles of beer you try to ply them with. You do have somewhat of a more severe method of forcefully trying to recruit a visitor as well, with this typically doing so much damage to faction relations that if you aren't already allied with them, or in very good standing, you might go to war with them over this action. You can see the stats related to this in the individual's information panel too, with things like the character's quality having a pretty large impact on the faction relation damage. If you take a deaf 80-year-old with a bad back and asthma off their hands, they probably won't mind that you got rid of creepy Uncle Bob. However, if you're trying to take the guy that showed up with a bionic eye, a double passion in shooting, and 18 skill to go with it, yeah, they won't really want to let that slide. Just remember that even old colonists can be made useful. If you happen to have a sanguiphage or 2 around, it can remove those pesky age debuffs, and you'll likely end up with someone who's absolutely stacked on skills, with a lifetime of experience behind them.
Can I come too?
Now you've got a plethora of additional options with hospitality to customise the mod to work exactly as you desire, both on a colony by colony basis and as a mod overall. So let's start with the individual map options that you have. This is where you'll set the default allowed area and shopping area for your map, rather than needing to manually assign each guest, as well as if you want to automatically attempt to entertain or befriend every guest, or leave that to an as and when it's needed kind of interaction. There's a nice easy option to disallow new guests if you need a break from people turning up and eating all of your food, or if your map is suddenly rather uninhabitable due to toxic fallout or horrific weather. You can also refuse guests until beds are ready, so people stop turning up and complaining that they have nowhere to sleep. I too enjoy turning up at a building site for a hotel and then complaining about the quality of their rooms while sleeping on the freshly excavated dirt. You'll likely want to keep guests asking if it's safe to come turned on, as your map isn't on any form of contraceptive, so following the rhythm method is the best choice. If they do come at a dangerous time, chances are they'll find themselves being aborted by raiders or dangers that are present on the map. The last checkbox will allow guests to take food for free, and it can make it a little bit easier if your guests are always fed and happy, as expensive food options will sometimes bankrupt certain visitors, leading them to begin to starve on day 3 of their stay. Not ideal. Equally, you can always set up some extremely cheap food options for these people. Paste dispensers will provide something, in a pinch at least. And that is to say that you will ideally want to keep these guests as happy as possible. Happy guests equals better relationship gains with their faction, more gifts and more frequent visits from other customers as your Rimworld TripAdvisor reviews start to build up. The higher you can get with a hospitality meter, the better, with it taking longer to improve than a colonist mood bar. So the more time you can keep the guest in a high mood, the better this bar will be by the end of their stay. However, if they've been miserable, then you can fully expect this to fall through the floor. Ideology can make this especially difficult with certain factions, with them being picky about their dietary requirements, if there are or aren't any drugs to offer them, as well as whatever else you might be doing with your colony. Don't expect many visitors to leave thinking their experience was a positive one if you've been butchering raider corpses back to back for their entire stay. The smell of long pork is unmistakable, and they do not appreciate being woken up to the sound of crackling flesh at 7 AM. Then you've got the overall mod settings. You can disable visitors entirely, which is a choice, I guess. If you'd rather not change your mod list but disable hospitality for a few runs, I guess that's the setting here to allow it. There's a more important setting that you might want to make use of here. Some guests will be happy to try and lend a hand around the base when they're staying with you. They might not always be that great at their job, especially annoying with things like crafting or doctoring. So here you have a few options if you want to disable guests helping with work altogether, or just specific jobs, as well as setting a minimum requirement for their skill level before they'll try to help. No more watching that medical skill 4 guest try and install a peg leg and somehow blind your already crippled colonist.
I am a surgeon!
If you feel a little awkward taking gifts when you're already charging visitors for a service, you can disable them, but these fun little mystery boxes for doing a good job are always cool to have around. Even if you don't need them, you can instantly throw them back into the for sale stockpile. Hopefully they'll be gone before the guest returns for another stay. You can tweak guest minimum and maximum group sizes, especially useful if your colony is already massive and you value your tick rate over randoms walking in for your B&B, or if you're happy with the size of your accommodation and want to hard cap it at a specific number. You can also increase or decrease how many groups may turn up within 3 days. Remember that this will be working with your maximum size, so if you have 8 beds and you cap it at 8, you might also want to set this to only allow 1 group at a time, unless you're happy throwing some sleeping spots down outside the hotel and calling it an outdoors experience stay. Silver multiplier will be helpful if you're looking to run something closer to a shopping experience rather than simple accommodation, cranking guest silver up so they'll be more likely to purchase from your designated shopping area whilst they stay with you. You can disable the guest tab entirely, useful if you've also disabled visitors for a few runs, or you can swap the guest tab to use an icon rather than text, if you're using a UI overhaul that has icons instead. There are a couple of settings for notifications too, if you'd like to receive a message ping when visitors have either purchased an item or made enough friends to be recruited. The final option is designed to fight cheese, preventing you from robbing visitors blind by making them fall over and picking up their inventory for yourself. If you'd like to run your B&B as more of a batter and burgle, then here's the option to allow that. Just be aware that guests won't exactly be rushing back to visit your obvious scam. And that is hospitality. Nice and simple. If you're not looking to play a colony to an endgame scenario but find yourself a little bit bored of simply killing raiders and then waiting for the next threat, this gives you something to do in your downtime. A better use for all of that excess food and materials that you have. Something to keep your builders and wardens busy in the late game too. Thanks for watching folks. If you have any mods you'd like to see a full breakdown for, or suggestions of mods you'd like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments, I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon or evening. Take care.